Welcome back to Studi.Live. 11th standard students, we are seeing chapter number 1, Living World, and in this session we are going to see how can we revise this chapter in 30 minutes. So let's begin with our chapter number 1, Living World. Now, in this chapter we know an interesting thing that our entire planet is composed of two parts, which is two components, biotic and abiotic. So everything what is present on our earth is included in abiotic and biotic components. The abiotic ones are the non-living ones, whereas the biotic components are the living organisms. So in the biotic components we have the living organisms, and in the abiotic ones we have the non-living organisms. So can I ask you one question? What is such factor that will help you to differentiate between a living organism and a non-living organism? So what comes in your mind? Yes, so automatically you would answer that living organisms grow, they reproduce, they show metabolism, they show growth, they show movement, and everything, all these life processes are shown only by living organisms. We can never see a stone growing or talking or walking or reproducing. So that is the basic life processes which are differentiating between a living organism and a non-living organism. So we begin our topic with the basic principles of life, which means first basic principle is the living organism which is once produced or born has to survive. So once it survives, for it, what it needs? It needs energy and many chemical molecules. So the living organism which is produced needs to survive, and for surviving it needs what? It needs many chemical molecules, which is nothing but obtained from the food we eat. So for this, the chemical molecules and energy is obtained from the food we eat. Now one question, when we have to drive a vehicle, we need fuel in that is petrol and diesel. Similarly, for moving our body, or we want energy for our body, the fuel for our body comes from the chemical molecules, which is the food we eat. So we are going to see which reaction takes place is the metabolism reaction which takes place. Now to understand metabolism, you need to understand two concepts. First is what is catabolism and what is anabolism. So what is catabolism? We have one large molecule, which is one complex molecule which is getting broken down into two simple substances. So that is called as catabolism. And when we say anabolism, it is the joining of two simple substances to form a complex substance. So the above one was the catabolic process or catabolism, and the down one we have is the anabolic process, or it is called as anabolism. So these are the two kinds of biochemical reactions which are taking place, which are commonly called as metabolism. So metabolism includes two things. One is catabolism and the second one is the anabolism. So catabolism is nothing but the breaking of molecules, and anabolism means it is the making of new molecules, which is called as anabolism. So that was our first criteria, that living organism which is born has to survive. Now after birth onwards, the organism shows the tendency of growth and development. So this growth and development is a well orchestrated process. Why? Because growth does not take place immediately. Does it ever happen that a child is born and the next day it starts walking and talking? It is not possible. So the growth takes place very slowly and over a period of years. Now one question is that you must have seen sand molders. We are putting on sand and the sand grows, but that is not living. Why? Because the materials are not added from within, they are added from outside. So the growth which is taking place in living organism, that growth takes place from within, that is from inside. So new materials are added from inside. So the growth is from within, and hence the above examples which are given of the sand molds or the boulders, they are non-living because their growth is not from within. So in third point, the growth and development, the growth and development do not occur for unlimited lifespan. We know once we are born, then we have adolescence, then we become adults, and after adults maturity, adults, and then we have old age. So in our body, the growth is for an not for unlimited lifespan. That is, we have to become old, and that process of getting old is called as aging. So we'll say here that growth does not occur for unlimited lifespan. After a particular age, our all organ systems, they start losing their efficient working, and that is the time we become old. This is called as the aging process of the body, which means we have become old and our systems and organs will lose their effective functioning. So life has to continue before becoming old. What happens is, living organism tries to produce a young one. So our parents has given us birth, which is a living organism is trying to produce young one like itself, and that process takes place by the process called as reproduction. So reproduction, when two parents are involved, it is sexual, and when one parent is involved, it is asexual. So we'll say that for life to continue, reproduction is very necessary. So the fifth point which we are seeing, the E1, as the body loses its capacity to perform metabolism, if any of the organ function of the body is not working, then what happens? Yes, unfortunately the organism dies. The sixth point is that living organism, as when we on the air conditioner, we can respond to the coldness, or when it is extremely hot, we start feeling hot. So living organism can respond to thermal, chemical, or biological changes in the surrounding, and this is also an unique property of living organism. So in these 6 points we have covered with, the first one was the living organism once born has to survive. For surviving, it needs energy, and that energy is obtained from the food we eat. After birth, there is growth and development, and that growth and development takes place from within. Then next one was, it does not occur for an unlimited lifespan, that our growth is for a limited lifespan, and after that we start becoming old, which is called as aging. And before the organism loses its efficient functioning, it does the function of reproduction. And the fifth point was, after the organism loses its efficient functioning, the organism dies. And the last point was, we can respond to various thermal, chemical, and biological changes in the surrounding, and this is the unique property of living organisms. So later in this chapter, we are going to see in this living world that there is a lot of diversity in living organisms. Now, on this earth, we have variety of organisms living together. So we have organisms are living together on this earth. So there is a quite good interaction you can see between living and non-living organisms, as well as between two living organisms or groups. So we will say that though living and non-living are staying together, there is an interaction between them, and also with living organisms and group of organisms. So systematic study of all this is very essential. So we have to do systematic study, and to do this we have certain methods which are called as aids. These methods are called as taxonomical aids to study this systematic study of all this living, non-living, and the interaction between living organisms. The methods which we are going to use are called as taxonomical aids, and they include, the first one is going to be the herbaria, the second one is going to be the botanical garden, the third is going to be the museum, and the fourth is the biodiversity park. So we have these 4 topics which we have to cover in this chapter. The first one is herbaria, the second is botanical garden, the third is museum, and the fourth is biodiversity park. So let us begin with the first one, which is the herbarium. As you have heard the name herbarium, which means it is containing some kind of plant material. Yes. So this herbarium is nothing but where dried plant material. So when we say herbarium, it's a dried plant specimen where they are kept. They are pressed and they are treated. Remember, during our childhood, we used to have leaves, and we used to keep them in our books for drying. We were actually practicing this technique of herbarium. So this herbarium is a place where dried plant specimen is pressed, treated. Now it is treated with the help of certain chemicals which we would be seeing later, then treated and mounted, which means they are stitched. They are stitched on a standard size sheet. Standard size sheet, which means the paper has to be of the same size in order to preserve it. So we'll say over here, all the plant material is dried and they are preserved in herbaria. Now this word herbaria was coined by Piton de Tournefort in his book. The name of his book was Elements. Now this art of herbarium was initiated by an Italian taxonomist. The name of the Italian taxonomist is Luca Ghini. So what takes place in the herbarium? This point is very important, where it is nothing but a dried plant specimen that is pressed, treated and mounted on a standard size sheet in order to preserve it. So in this figure we can see how the plant material is dried and it is mounted on a standard size sheet. It is mounted on a standard size sheet in order to preserve it. We can see over here that this is extreme right hand side corner, and in this extreme right hand side corner we can see what is written is from where it is obtained and the detailed description is given. So this right hand side corner, what is written is called as label. So this is called as label. So after mounting it on a standard size sheet to preserve it, it needs to be labeled, where there is a detailed information regarding the plant material which is used as kept in herbarium. So what is done is, in that label what is written is the date, the place of collection along with detailed classification and highlighting its ecological peculiarities and characters of the plant. So these all are written on the same sheet. The local names of the plant and the name of the collector may also be added. So all this information is given where on the lower right corner, and this is called as the label. So what is given in the label is the date, the place of collection along with detailed classification and highlighting its ecological peculiarities, characters of the plant. They all are recorded on the same sheet. And the local name, for example, mango is a local name and the scientific name is Mangifera indica, and the name of the collector is also added. All this information, where it is given on the extreme right hand side corner of the page, and this is called as the label. So this was all about herbarium, which you should remember that what is done is, for preservation they use certain chemicals. Like if the plant is quite succulent, and when we dry it, it starts breaking, so that time it is treated with chemical like formaldehyde or formalin. So that what we are going to see in the later topic of the museum. So in this second topic, which is our botanical garden. So here in this figure you can see botanical garden, and you can see the big label which is given as the great banyan tree, and it is detailed explanation is given that it is older than 250 years and it is having a covering an area of 1.5 hectares. So such plants are kept in botanical garden. So this is the example of a botanical garden in Kolkata, where we have a 255-year-old banyan tree. So what is there in botanical garden? So botanical names suggest, so it is going to contain only plants. So here these are the places where plants of different varieties, so plants of different varieties are collected from different parts of the world. Now in these botanical gardens, different kinds of plants which are collected from different parts of the world, they are grown in a scientific and systematic and in vivo manner. In vivo manner means inside their natural homes. So they are grown in a scientific and in vivo manner. These plants need to be labeled, as we could see this label over here about the great banyan tree. And in this label board, we can see its common name, how old the plant is and how much area it is covering. So this label board shows scientific as well as common name of the plant, and if it has certain additional information, so that all is also mentioned in this label board. So in botanical gardens, the plants of different varieties, they are collected and they are grown. So when we visit a botanical garden, we can see different kinds of plants and different characters. What are the differences in these plants we can observe. Our third topic which we have to see is about the museum. But before that, here you could see this is Luca Guinea, who has given about the herbarium we had seen, and he has also established the first botanical garden of the world. So Luca Guinea gets two characters. First is he has introduced in us the herbarium, and he has also put the first botanical garden by Luca Guinea at Pisa, which is Italy. This botanical garden is known for largest collection, which is containing more than 30,000 specimens, which are preserved plants and covering more than 7 million herbaria. So he is having contribution to both botanical gardens and herbaria. So after botanical gardens, let us move to the museum. So museums are places where collection of preserved plant and animal specimens are kept. So here we have preserved plant and animal specimens which are kept. So in this figure you could see, here you could see animals as well as plants are preserved and kept in these museums. So there is collection of preserved plant and animal specimens are kept. So these plants and animals, they may be preserved in formalin. This formalin contains 10 to 40% formaldehyde, and they can be kept in transparent jars. Yes, you must have seen in your laboratory when you must be seeing transparent jars, in that different organisms like ascaris or different, you can see specimens like a starfish are kept in transparent jars. These jars are also labeled to identify which plant or which animal specimen is present. So that transparent liquid is not water, it is formalin, which is 10 to 40% formaldehyde. So larger animals like birds and animals, they are usually stuffed and they are preserved. So when we have like a parrot or a pigeon, so they are stuffed and they are preserved. So their internal body parts are removed and they are stuffed and they are kept for display. This science is known as taxidermy. And also in museum, we have specimens in dried forms. They are also kept in museum. So in museum total, we have collection of both plants and animal specimens in one same place. Either they will be kept in transparent jars, or they will be stuffed and preserved, or they can be dried. So we have so many different varieties in a museum. We can also find systematic collections of shells, skeleton of animals, insect boxes in museums. So we have shells, skeleton of animals, insect boxes also in museums. So for an educational center, they are called as hubs of biodiversity studies, where under one single roof you can find a lot of variety and biodiversity for young minds. So here educational institute, they are using this museum as a hub for biodiversity studies. So after this museum, we move to our last topic, which is zoological park. You all must have visited zoological park. What is difference between a zoological park and a national park? Yes, in zoological park, it is also called as zoo. Here animals are kept in captivity, which means they are kept in cages. They are kept under in cages under protective barriers, and they are kept within a specific limit. So zoological park is commonly called as zoo. It is a very common interest for, it is an interest for common man. In zoo, the wild animals are kept in captivity. Captivity means enclosed space, which is nothing but cages. They are kept in cages. Why they are kept? They are protected and care is taken. They are protected and care is taken to provide them with conditions which are similar to their natural habitat, which means they are properly nourished, food is given, water is given, they are protected from sunlight and any other adverse condition. So they are given proper care and protection similar to their natural habitat. This word is called as XC2. XC2 means outside their natural home. Outside their natural home, where? In a zoo. In a zoo, a naturalist can study the food habits and behavior of animals, which is difficult to understand in jungle or in a national park. So in zoo, we can study about these food habits and behavior of animals. So what else? After we complete this zoo, we have to see what is a monograph. A monograph is nothing but a book or a where a description is given, and what is done is it describes any one selected biological group, whereas manual provides information keys about identification of species found in a particular area. So difference between, you can see, a monograph and a manual. In a monograph you will find only description about any one particular biological group, whereas when we say manual, in a manual we'll find lot of information. Like when we take our manual, we get information and about different kinds of species which are living in that particular area. So what is there is flora. When we say flora, it is nothing but the plant life occurring in a particular area on time. So here we have to understand about four concepts: flora, monograph, and third one is the manual. So these are the differences between these three topics. And last one we are going to see is Biodiversity Park. So in this Biodiversity Park, what is this Biodiversity Park? Suppose we have a barren or a degraded landscape where there are no plants, nothing. In that barren or degraded landscape, when we are putting an ecological assemblage of species, which means we had a barren unexploited land, and in that first we are growing trees, then we are making a pond of water, then we are bringing in animals there, and we are making a home for them. Like we construct for ourselves a home on a barren land, here we are constructing a home for these animals and plants. That will be called as a biodiversity park. So it is an ecological assemblage of species which is going to form self-sustaining communities. This word self-sustaining communities means when we are growing their trees, we are keeping a pond or a water body. So those animals and plants will be self-sustaining, which means they will not require frequent human interaction, or they will not require the attention of humans. It will be self-sustaining communities where on a degraded and barren landscape, which means where there are no living organisms first. So there we are first planting trees, then pond, then we are bringing in animals. So such example we have is late Uttam Rao Patil Biodiversity Park, which is established in Mahabaleshwar, Guregar. This park is the best model for conservation of natural heritage in urban landscape. In cities, we can see a good natural heritage in cities. So let's move on to the next page, which is the last topic of our chapter. Now in this we can see is the last topic, which is the key. In this key, what is a key? Now key is a taxonomical aid. When we say taxonomical aid, it is a method which is used for classification of plants and animals. Let me give you an example. Suppose when we are seeing plants' height, so we can describe it either as tall or dwarf. And to our surprise, we see that the plant is tall. So the character here, we have two contrasting characters, which is tall and dwarf. Out of that, when I said the plant is tall, so one contrasting character which is getting accepted, which is tall. So the character which is getting accepted is tall, and the other one, which is dwarf, is rejected. So one of the contrasting characters gets accepted and the other one gets rejected. So the statement in key, the one which is accepted, which was our tall character, that will be called as lead. So key is a taxonomical aid method by which we are going to do classification of plants and animals, and this key is normally based on contrasting characters of the plant. Contrasting, as you know, one is going to be dominant character and the other one is going to be recessive. Normally keys are analytical in nature. Now, we are going to study about classification of these plants and animals in the later chapters. For that, we complete this chapter for now. For later chapters, please stay tuned with Studi.Live. Thank you.